buckle up, Skol faithful, because this is one of those Tuesdays where the Minnesota Vikings universe got turned completely upside down, and there is no good way to ease you into it. In the span of 24 hours, we watched heartbreak collide with scandal, scandal collide with comedy, and comedy collide with a quarterback battle that is about to get a whole lot messier. If you thought this was going to be a quiet off-season news day, think again, because the purple and gold rumor mill just kicked into overdrive, and you are not going to want to miss a single second of it. Let's start with the news that stopped everyone in their tracks, because before we get into football drama, we have to talk about something far bigger than the game itself. Yesterday morning, on Good Morning America, former Tennessee Titans running back Chris Johnson, the man known across the league as CJ2K, sat down and delivered news that left fans of every team, not just Vikings fans, absolutely devastated. At only 40 years old, Johnson revealed that he has been diagnosed with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. If you have ever known someone who has battled ALS, you already understand just how brutal this disease really is. It is a condition that slowly takes away a person's physical abilities while their mind remains completely intact, fully aware of everything happening to their body. It is one of the cruelest diagnoses a human being can receive. And watching someone you love go through that deterioration while still being completely present mentally is something that breaks families in ways that are almost impossible to put into words. What made this announcement even more gut-wrenching was how quickly things have apparently progressed for Johnson. During his interview, he had to communicate using a machine that allowed him to text out responses and speak using only his eyes. Think about that for a moment. A man who once dominated NFL backfields with blazing speed, a man who ran for over 2,000 yards in a single season, one of the most explosive offensive weapons of his generation, is now using eye-tracking technology just to communicate. It is a gut punch, plain and simple, and it is a sobering reminder that no amount of money, fame, or athletic dominance can shield anyone from the fragility of the human body. The entire football community, including everyone here, is sending prayers and support to Chris Johnson and his family during what has to be an unbelievably difficult time. There really is no smooth way to transition out of news like that, and honestly, we are not even going to try. Some things just deserve a moment of silence before we move forward. Now, shifting gears into the football world, because the news cycle does not stop even on the heaviest of days, we have to talk about a situation that has rocked the Detroit Lions and sent shockwaves through the entire NFC North. Cornerback Terrion Arnold has been arrested, and the fallout has been swift and brutal. Arnold is reportedly facing a $1 million bond, which tells you immediately just how serious these charges are. When a number like that gets attached to a bond, you know we are not talking about some minor incident. Insiders are already speculating that Arnold will not be playing this week against the Chargers, and that might end up being the least of his problems. Here is the part that really tells the story. NFL insider Ian Rappaport reported that the Lions have already released Arnold. Let that sink in for a second. When a team moves that fast to cut ties with a player, especially a player who was a key piece of their defensive secondary, that is a massive red flag. Teams do not make decisions like that lightly, and definitely not this quickly, unless the situation is about as serious as it gets. The expectation now is that Arnold could be facing actual jail time, and there is a very real chance that his NFL career, the one he worked his entire life to build, could be over before it really even got going. Now, to be fair, the legal process still has to play out, and nothing is officially decided until a court says so. We have seen situations before where players were written off entirely, only to bounce back. Remember James Pierce Jr. a few months ago? People were saying his career was finished, and yet there he was, right back at OTAs like nothing happened. So nothing in this league is ever truly guaranteed until it is finalized. But the early signs here are not promising for Arnold, and realistically, expecting any team to take a chance on him before his trial concludes seems unlikely. And if he is ultimately convicted, the math gets even tougher. By the time legal proceedings wrap up, he could be at an age and in a position where stepping back into a starting NFL role becomes nearly impossible. It is a stark reminder of a lesson we hear over and over in professional sports. It does not matter how much money you have, how famous you are, or how bright your future once looked. Bad decisions carry consequences, and sometimes those consequences are career-ending. And yes, before the comment section explodes with it, we already know what some of you are thinking. Should the Vikings sign Terrion Arnold? The answer is an emphatic no. With everything hanging over his head right now, signing him would be an enormous risk for any franchise, let alone one that is trying to build long-term stability and trust within its locker room. Let this situation play out in the courts first before anyone even entertains that conversation. Okay, now let's pivot to something a little lighter, because we need it after all that heaviness. Social media has been having an absolute field day with a meme comparing Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell, or as some fans affectionately nickname situations involving him, to other public figures based on facial expressions and reactions caught on camera. One particular comparison floating around the internet right now has fans squinting and insisting that in certain angles there is a passing resemblance to Elon Musk. Is it accurate? Debatable? Is it hilarious? Absolutely, the internet never disappoints when it comes to finding the most random celebrity lookalikes among NFL personalities. And this one has fans cracking up across every Vikings forum and comment section imaginable. Now let's get into the real meat of the Vikings roster talk, because there is actually some very encouraging news buried in all of this chaos. Last season, the Vikings defense had moments of brilliance carried largely by their star pass rusher racking up an absurd number of sacks. But the unit as a whole was constantly put in difficult positions. Why? Because the offense struggled to consistently move the football, which meant the defense was repeatedly forced to defend short fields. On top of that, special teams was an adventure of its own, often feeling like a walking penalty waiting to happen. Outside of a few bright spots like standout performances from key special teams contributors. But here is where things get genuinely exciting for Vikings fans looking ahead to next season. Advanced metrics paint a very promising picture for this defense. According to expected points added analytics, the Vikings defense finished with a mark of -0, 11 expected points added per play, which placed them as the fourth best defense in the entire NFL last season by that measurement. To put that into context, the Houston Texans, a defense absolutely loaded with talent, finished as the #1 ranked unit. Right behind them, in a somewhat ironic twist considering recent storylines, the so-called Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks finished at -.112, which actually places them just ahead of Minnesota. The interesting wrinkle here is that the Seahawks defense was reportedly one of the worst in the league for a large chunk of the season until a certain standout player arrived and completely transformed their unit's trajectory. Rounding out the rest of the top defenses around the league, the Jacksonville Jaguars landed in third, which raised some eyebrows given their overall reputation. The Cleveland Browns also had an excellent defensive season, at least until they made the controversial decision to trade away superstar pass rusher Myles Garrett, a move that still has fans and analysts scratching their heads. The Los Angeles Chargers also turned in a strong defensive campaign, while the Denver Broncos defense, often viewed as overrated by national media, still managed to put together a respectably solid year. The Philadelphia Eagles and New Orleans Saints also found themselves within shouting distance of the league's elite defensive tier. So here is the bottom line for Vikings fans worried about life after losing star pass rusher Jonathan Greenard this offseason. Minnesota's defense was already operating at a top 4 level in the entire NFL, and there is every reason to believe they can remain in that elite tier going into this upcoming season. Yes, losing Greenard's production is a real loss, there is no sugarcoating that, but the Vikings have options to fill that gap. Snap distribution is expected to be divided among several talented pass rushers, including Dallas Turner, along with depth pieces who will be given expanded opportunities to prove themselves, including some snaps sprinkled in along the interior and edge rotations. And speaking of Dallas Turner specifically, there is a growing sense among Vikings observers that this is truly his moment to break out. After flashing potential during his rookie campaign, all signs point toward Turner being primed to take that next step and establish himself as a legitimate stud edge rusher in this league. The talent has always been evident, and now with an expanded role and more opportunities to showcase his skill set, this feels like the season where everything could click for him in a major way. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, because there is simply no way to talk about Vikings news this week without touching on the ongoing saga surrounding NFL insider and reporter drama involving claims about quarterback Kirk Cousins and his eventual departure, along with the persistent rumors swirling around the team's quarterback situation. There has been an effort to steer clear of constantly rehashing this gossip cycle, mainly because, frankly, this particular reporter has a track record that fans here have had issues with before. A couple of summers ago, there were significant credibility concerns raised regarding rumors about Aaron Rodgers potentially landing in Minnesota that seemingly appeared out of nowhere with little substantiation. According to a breakdown from respected insider Thor Nystrom, this same reporter has a pattern of sensationalized and sometimes inaccurate storytelling. She reportedly broke news about a coaching firing using an anecdote involving paternity leave, only to later walk that story back after facing significant public backlash, ultimately clarifying that the organization had actually been supportive throughout the situation. Then, last spring, she was reportedly pushing the narrative that the Vikings should pursue Aaron Rodgers, all while simultaneously disparaging 22-year-old quarterback J.J. McCarthy, a young player who at that point had not even taken a single regular season NFL snap. She claimed to have an inside connection within the Vikings organization providing her with this information, though speculation about who that source might actually be has been rampant, with absolutely zero confirmation of who it could be. And then there is the traffic stop story, which honestly sounds like something straight out of a daytime soap opera. According to the tale relayed by this same reporter, when she was pulled over by law enforcement, she allegedly FaceTimed a coach in real time and somehow managed to get out of receiving a ticket. The story goes that the officer who pulled her over happened to be a die-hard Vikings fan, and upon seeing a text conversation displayed involving head coach Kevin O'Connell, the officer's attitude reportedly shifted entirely. It is the kind of story that makes you shake your head and laugh simultaneously, because it almost sounds too on the nose to be real. The running joke now is something along the lines of supporting law enforcement, except apparently when that officer happens to be a die-hard Vikings fan, willing to let a speeding ticket slide because of team loyalty. Regardless of how much truth lies in any of these stories, the pattern of questionable reporting continues to follow this individual. And Vikings fans have learned to take everything from this particular source with an enormous grain of salt. On a much funnier and far less consequential note, we have to talk about the ongoing tragedy that is Isaiah Rogers and his video game likeness in Madden NFL. For multiple years running now, esports has somehow managed to completely botch the facial scan and player model rendering for Rogers, and it has become something of a running joke within the Vikings fan community. His digital avatar from last season was, to put it kindly, not a flattering representation at all. And now, heading into the new Madden installment, Rogers himself has taken to social media directly pleading with esports developers, essentially begging them not to repeat the same mistake again this year. At this point, the situation has genuinely crossed over into what can only be described as accidental cyberbullying by video game developers. Comparisons have even been made jokingly suggesting that his in-game model resembles actor Eric Andre more than it resembles the actual NFC Defensive Player of the Week, an honor Rogers earned following a historic interception-filled performance against the Cincinnati Bengals. It really does not look anything like him. And fans are desperately hoping the developers finally get it right this time around. Shifting back to more serious roster business, star wide receiver Justin Jefferson is entering his 7th NFL season, and by all accounts he is doing so in style, both literally and figuratively. Coming off a massive new contract that cemented his status as one of the highest-paid receivers in football, Jefferson has been showing off some serious bling lately, including custom grills and elaborate diamond-encrusted jewelry that has fans both impressed and slightly concerned. The natural question that comes up whenever players show off expensive jewelry like this is simple. Why would anyone risk wearing items worth tens of thousands of dollars onto an active football field, where the risk of getting tackled and damaging or losing that jewelry seems incredibly high? It almost seems like asking for trouble, especially for a player as explosive and frequently tackled in the open field as Jefferson. In fact, there have been instances in recent years where Jefferson nearly lost expensive jewelry during the chaos of an actual game, which only adds fuel to that ongoing debate about whether players should simply stick to wearing replica or costume jewelry on the field just to avoid that risk altogether. Jefferson's journey from a hungry, driven prospect coming out of LSU to becoming one of the most accomplished and decorated receivers in franchise history has been nothing short of remarkable, and the success shows no signs of slowing down. If this is what Year 7 Jefferson looks like, dripped out in diamonds and riding the high of sustained excellence, fans can only imagine what Year 17 Jefferson might look like by the time his career eventually winds down. Now, let's address what might be the single biggest storyline heading into training camp, which kicks off in roughly 5 weeks. The quarterback competition between J.J. McCarthy and newly acquired veteran Kyler Murray is shaping up to be one of the most fascinating subplots of the entire NFL offseason. According to a report relayed from respected NFL insider Albert Breer, most league observers currently assume that Murray will ultimately win the starting job heading into the regular season. That said, McCarthy now has a legitimate opportunity, armed with an extra year of experience under his belt, to demonstrate that he can operate the offense with far greater command, poise, and confidence than he displayed during his rookie campaign, all while surrounded by a genuinely talented supporting roster. It is worth noting, with a hint of humor, that Breer happens to be a well-known Ohio State fan, which has led to some light-hearted speculation about whether his analysis carries just a touch of reverse psychology bias against Michigan alum McCarthy. Regardless of any personal allegiances, the broader sentiment seems to be that while Murray currently holds the edge heading into camp, McCarthy has made tangible and visible strides, particularly with his mechanics, which clearly needed refinement after last season. Reports indicate he has been working extensively on touch and accuracy, learning that not every single throw needs to be fired in at maximum velocity. Sometimes a well-placed, perfectly touched pass is far more effective than simply trying to throw the ball through a defender's chest. And finally, wrapping up this whirlwind of Vikings news, there has been some notable front office shuffling worth mentioning. After departing the organization last week, former executive Ryan Grigson has reportedly landed with the Cleveland Browns, hired on as a senior football advisor, while Chris Cooper has been promoted to senior vice president within that organization. There had been speculation that Grigson might remain involved with the Vikings front office in some capacity, given the team currently operates with 2 assistant general managers. However, it appears Grigson has moved on entirely, which, depending on who you ask, might actually work out just fine for everyone involved, allowing the existing front office structure in Minnesota to continue operating without added complexity. So there you have it, folks, an absolute roller coaster of a Tuesday in the world of Minnesota Vikings football. We went from heartbreaking news about Chris Johnson's ALS diagnosis to shocking legal trouble derailing a rising star's career in Detroit, to encouraging defensive metrics suggesting the Vikings are poised to remain an elite unit, to ongoing reporter credibility drama, to hilarious video game mishaps, all the way through to a genuinely compelling quarterback battle shaping up for training camp. It is days like this that remind us why following this league, and this team in particular, is never, ever boring. Before you go, let's keep this community growing strong. If this video kept you informed, entertained, or even just gave you something to talk about with your fellow Vikings fans, do us a massive favor and smash that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more fans just like you. Drop a comment down below and let us know your thoughts. Do you think McCarthy can actually win that starting job? What is your reaction to the Grigson move? And most importantly, send your thoughts and prayers to Chris Johnson and his family during this incredibly difficult time. And if you have not already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another Vikings news dump. We will see you in the next one. Skol.